Don't want to pay 4 workers for doing nothing for 6 hours? Fine, pay 30 workers for doing nothing for 6 hours. I'm a manager at a North American railroad. A huge part of our job involves employees of different specialties. These specialties are under different unions and regulated by different labor rules. Nevertheless, we managers of all these directions interact excellently with each other so that the work is done properly, especially when you need to work at night. Railway track workers, trackmen, may have a night shift, but signalmen do not. Moreover, if they go out to work at night, then after 12 hours they are obliged to let them go home, and if the night shift falls on their working day, then they are still entitled to a day off with pay for the whole day. Track workers have 3 shifts, while we only have day and evening. There is no night shift because the management refuses to hire the required number of employees. In short, our company decided that paying the guys to go home 2 hours early on Thursday, then go out on night overtime from 10 in the evening to 10 in the morning and get another 4 paid hours for going to sleep is, in their opinion, too much. This kind of practice will lead to the collapse of the capitalism of the country and then of the entire universe. And so they decreed the guys from the second shift should stay 4 hours longer and the guys from the first should come 4 hours earlier. I tell them first, I cannot force employees to work overtime unless it is an emergency, and the union is unlikely to recognize as an emergency the fact that we want to do the work at night, so as not to delay traffic. Second, not all employees have the same qualifications. Third, since you took half of my cars away 5 years ago for the sake of economy, I simply don't have the transport for the entire second shift to show up at 2 in the morning, replace those who are already working and continue the work. The current workers will have to fold everything up, collect the tools, return to the office, wait for the small shift to load up, take them back to the place, conduct an introductory briefing, and only then start working. Fourth and most importantly, while we are not there, the track workers cannot work, because we need to remove various equipment from the rails so that they can carry out their work, and then we need to put everything back in place so that trains can run in the morning. All this, of course, was ignored because a freckled college graduate who starts every conversation with the phrase "I have an MBA, damn it," somehow ended up in a position responsible for estimates and decided to complain about round-the-clock work. So, having documented all this at the meeting, I step aside. I decided if my boss is not going to support me, I will not interfere with the inevitable disaster. After all, I have been working in this field for 27 years, and he graduated from the University of Texas at El Paso with a GPA of 3.6, so he probably knows better. On the very first night, right on schedule, the work stopped at 1 o'clock. The second shift arrived and started working only at 4.15. The guys from the track folded up because in the remaining time they still would not have had time to disassemble, do and reassemble everything by 7 a.m. to let the trains run. On the second night, the shift change went a little faster. They left by 3.45, managed to work a little before folding up again. On the third and fourth night there was a heavy downpour, so the road back and forth took even longer. After the arrival of the new shift at 4.30, no work was done. On Monday morning, at the planning meeting, it turned out that the track workers had completed about 30% of what was planned for the week. At this rate, the 6-week job will be completed with a delay of more than 15 weeks, and with a budget overrun of more than 300%. Mr. MBA began his carefully rehearsed speech about key indicators, the ratio of spent to completed and other meaningless nonsense. Then he moved on to accusations against me. Allegedly, I conspired with the workers to undermine productivity. I raised the printout with the minutes of the previous meeting and very clearly told him that he himself had asked, or rather insisted, that we make a complete shift change of personnel in the middle of the track department's work. I looked him in the eye and asked if he wanted to reconsider this position. Well, of course, not wanting to listen to some engineer there, he said no, and I, in his opinion, should somehow magically make the shift change of personnel faster. The next 3 weeks went according to the same scheme. They had been on the site for a month, and they had actually done work for just under a week and a half. One night Mr. MBA showed up on the site. He arrived just in time to see my night crew folding up, the track workers turning off the equipment and gathering outside. Some to smoke, some to chat, some just to relax. Everyone knows that they now have 3 hours to fool around while they will still be paid. My guys, seeing that Mr. MBA had arrived, immediately called me. I got out of bed, quickly got to the site and found this guy in sparkling, just unpacked protective gear, yelling at the workers, demanding to get back into the equipment and start, expletive, working. Everyone refused, because they knew perfectly well that they could not work without us. Not that they cared much about our equipment, but they were already fed up too. Mr. MBA began to command too zealously, and nothing unites union workers like the opportunity to teach a manager who really deserves it a lesson. I came up just in the midst of his abusive monologue and calmly said, "Mr. MBA, you are not suggesting that these qualified employees violate Rule XXX, which directly states that they have no right to drive equipment through the switch. Note a fork in the road until the signalmen are convinced of its serviceability, right? This would be a serious violation and would threaten the worker with suspension from duty for 30 days without pay. And assuming that you gave him such an instruction, you wouldn't randomly have a slip in the union card in your pocket, while he would have 30 witnesses who saw you give him this instruction. So you didn't mean that, did you?" He turned purple with anger, slammed the door of his little white service car and left. For another 2 weeks, he held on to his idiotic idea with a shift change in the middle of the night until he could no longer hide the huge delays from his superiors. And suddenly he stopped being responsible for estimates. Do you know what the total cost of this experiment was? Over $940,000 in 6 weeks. But the guy really saved $700 a night for the very night hours that did not need to be paid. Edited. The funniest thing is that in the comments and in personal messages, I was written by guys from 11 different railroads. The guys swear that the story is exactly about their road. The day I was hired and fired at a law firm, it happened about 5 years ago. I worked as a chef in a bakery. My job was to cook everything except pastries. Every morning the baker and I would come in around 4 a.m. and quickly prepare all the food needed for the day. This allowed me to be free around 10 a.m. At the same time, it was convenient for us to deliver online orders. Often companies or some organizations placed large catering orders with us. The baker and I split them in half and delivered them on the way home. This story is about an order for the company's Bob, Dick and Harry, lawyers. I had not delivered orders there before, but they were our regulars. Every financial quarter they held a large meeting. For their event, they needed about $700 worth of bagels and other products. The order included 8 dozen bagels, all 10 types of our cream cheese, pastries, brownies and as much coffee as would be enough to supply a student dormitory during the session. My passenger seat, the entire back row and the trunk were crammed with food. The BDH firm was located on the 9th floor of a commercial skyscraper in the very center of the industrial area. There were no parking spaces. There were parking meters outside the building, but I knew that I would have to make about 10 trips to deliver everything and I didn't have many small things. According to our company policy, I could safely park wherever I needed to, pay fines and then submit checks. The money was returned along with the salary. The building had its own parking lot, and I drove there. A guard, let's call him Sam, stopped me and said that the parking lot was only for employees. I showed him the delivery note and even offered a bagel as a bribe. Never leave the bakery without a couple of extra bagels. Sam refused the bagel and said that I could park in one of the guest spaces on the lower floor. The cost is $5 for every 30 minutes, minimum 10. I thanked him and drove down. There were only 6 guest places there. Only 6 and all occupied. I drove back to Sam and then I noticed a free parking space with the sign Bob, Dick and Harry lawyers. All the places are occupied on many signs with the names of employees. The last place is free and signed as a BDH guest. Perfect. I stood in that place, took the most important thing from the whole order, coffee, and went to the stairs. I went into the elevator, pressed the button for the 9th floor. The elevator asked me for an employee pass. Well damn. I tried to press the lobby. It worked. From there I went to the 9th floor by the stairs. Finally I found myself at the door of the law firm Bob, Dick and Harry. I introduced myself and was taken to the meeting room where the meeting was to take place. A table had already been prepared for me. I put down the coffee and went for the next batch of food. And then I see Sam talking to a girl at the reception. He runs up to me and starts yelling, "I'm going to put a blocker on your damn car. I told you to park in the guest parking on the 1st floor." I didn't even get a word in. He started rambling about security, that I supposedly pose a threat to the building and people. At that moment, a very respectable man in an expensive suit approaches us. It turns out to be Bob himself, the one from Bob, Dick and Harry. Bob asks what's wrong, and they start a slight argument. Bob, this guy is delivering food to my meeting. He has the right to park in my spaces. Sam, these places belong to the building. You rent them like the whole floor. I decide who can park here. He's not an employee, so he has no right. Bob, then I'm hiring him. Sam, you can't do that. Bob, you know what, you're right. Harry, come here. Harry approaches with a cheerful look. Bob, Harry is the head of our HR department. Harry, hire this guy. Harry takes out a piece of paper and hastily writes my name. Now he is an employee of Bob, Dick and Harry Farm, signs it and asks me to sign it too. I sign. Bob reaches out to the receptionist, who is already taking something out. Bob, here's your badge, parking ticket and lift card. Now please get to the business I hired you for. Delivering my bagels. Sam watched all this with fierce anger, and I went down in the elevator to the car. After 7 sweet elevator rides, everything was delivered. Bob and Harry met me at the table. Bob, you have made great strides in our company. I'm proud of your work, but I feel it's time for us to part ways. Here's your final check. Bob handed me a crisp $50 bill. Harry, and your severance pay. Please don't forget to hand in your badge and pass at the exit. Harry handed me $20 and sent me on my way. The girl at the reception desk punched my parking ticket and I headed for the exit. At the exit, Sam asked me for the ticket with a sneer. I inserted it into the Bob machine. He confirmed everything and released me for free. Sam angrily drills me with a look, and I drive off into the sunset. The boss took credit for my achievements. I responded to him with malicious compliance. Several years ago, I was hired as a manager to create a contract department from scratch in a tech startup. My boss was on the opposite coast, and we hardly communicated. About a year later, the company hired consultants to reform all departments except the contract department because it worked so clearly that it was decided not to touch it. I was really proud of it. The company even sent me on a paid vacation to the Bahamas as a thank you. Returning from vacation, I asked to be promoted to director. The boss said I wasn't grown up yet. I asked what exactly I needed to do to qualify for the position of director. He sent a list that was literally everything I was already doing and essentially admitted that if I became a director, he would no longer be able to attribute my achievements to himself. Friends advised me to either quit or shut up and endure. Instead, I chose the good killer tactic. I sincerely apologized to my boss for crossing the line and said that I was returning to the role of ordinary manager. I even printed out the list of manager's duties and attached it to my desk. After that, everything fell apart faster than I could have imagined. We stopped meeting the sales plan. The product department stated that the boss had agreed to terms in the contract that completely destroyed their budget and disrupted the product launch. He didn't understand the commission arrangements and allowed the sales department to manipulate contracts, which resulted in us paying commissions even on contracts with termination clauses. I intervened only once to stop the contract amendment because the boss himself unknowingly allowed the vice president to artificially inflate sales figures. I had to connect the financial director and the controller. In the end, I even had to call the CEO. Rumors began to circulate that the boss was sitting in meetings clutching an anti-stress ball and scattering with curses, and I was at maximum relaxation at this time. In my spare time, I began to prepare for professional certifications and successfully received them. After work, I now had time to go to the gym before rush hour. About a month after I took back all the extra responsibilities, the boss gave me a 7% bonus. It wasn't discussed directly, but I realized that he wanted me to take on the duties of director again, only without an official promotion. But I continued to strictly follow only what was in the job description of the manager. 6 months after I took 10 days off and my unlimited quota, I was laid off. I took a 3-month break and then got a new job with a 35% salary increase. And although I'm glad that I'm now earning more, I sincerely loved that company and the people I worked with. It's very 184 equals to watch someone take credit for your work again and again. Karen from my building said her key card wasn't working. Demanded that I fix it. Well, I fixed it. The incident happened literally 5 minutes ago, and I think it's wildly funny. I'm the building manager. Everything that happens here or goes wrong is my area of responsibility. I make sure everything runs smoothly. My boss made it clear this is my building, and I was hired not only to clean up the mess, but also to manage everything here. I'm not some jerk, but I know how to get my way firmly but politely. Before me, there was no manager here for a long time, and everyone, both clients and employees, did what they wanted. In the 4 months that I have been here, my boss has repeatedly praised my work and has always taken my side. This is the best boss I've ever had. I have a tough but fair approach, and my reputation proves it. Let's move on. We have our own Karen in the building, and believe me, she fully matches the stereotypes. She works as a consultant in the family support service and has nothing to do with our organization. She's always complaining about everything and she takes my boss's brains out every day. This lady shares an office with another woman woman who, unfortunately, takes over all her habits. You can say, Karen trainee. Kansas. This week I am auditing all key cards, and I specifically didn't touch Karen's card because she is the only one with that name. It is difficult not to notice. I lacked 75 cards. A bunch of former employees still have access to the entire building, some since 2015. As a result, I removed a lot of old cards, especially those with strange names or just with the office number, including I removed the Kansas card because it was not registered in her name. So Kansas just came up to me and said that her card doesn't work. And just then, the main Karen passed by and heard all this. I went and restored the Kansas card. We went together to check if it works. And Karen was standing near the office and complaining to my boss that her key card also doesn't work. Karen left somewhere. The boss rolled her eyes. I smiled and said that I would sort it out. After we made sure that the Kansas card works, I went downstairs, opened the system, entered Karen's name, and guess what? Her key card was in perfect order. Moreover, she had master access to the entire building, but I changed all her settings and restricted access only to her offices. I went upstairs and attracted the boss's attention. Her office is right next to the office of these ladies. Silently showed her, listen, and pointed to the door. Then I opened the door and say, oh, Karen, I checked your key card in the system, everything is in order. Moreover, it is indicated there that you had master access to the entire building, and by order of the management, since you are not a contractor and not an employee of the company, I cannot leave you with such a level of access. Therefore, I had to lower your level. Now you can only get into this office. I can't allow you to interfere with people who are doing official business. Wink. Thank you for drawing my attention to your card. She began to object, saying that she needs master access for such and such reason, but I only replied, yes, sorry, maybe it used to work. But now I'm the building manager and you don't need to have access anywhere except this office. And if you suddenly need it, it will already be beyond your competence. So you will contact me, okay? Great, thank you, bye. And just slammed the door in her face. The boss in her office quietly choked with laughter and showed me high five through the glass. Edited. I want to clarify something. I am not humiliating my colleagues in any way. They are amazing people, and no, I'm not licking their boots. They work in the field of education and do everything possible to help students and visitors. But the building partially closed, and many relaxed because of COVID. We provide free auditoriums to those who need them, including a computer class by appointment. Problems arose after the previous manager suddenly died and the temporary deputy was ineffective. Coupled with the consequences of the pandemic, this all led to the mess. My colleagues simply couldn't monitor the implementation of all the rules themselves, and as a result, the auditoriums were ruined, keys were stolen, and so on. When I came, I restored order, gave the staff the opportunity to do their usual work and not clean up after visitors, and not equals O equals G8BLAO with them. Karen is not an employee, she just rents an office. She is not entitled to access our materials, consumables or work areas, especially when it comes to confidential information of students. Can I fire you? This is a story of malicious compliance in which I directly participated, although my former boss was the initiator. It was in the early 2000s. On winter and summer vacations, being a high school student and a college freshman, I worked part